Hello everyone, Tom with Capo Fetish. Today let's talk about our favorite 80s alternative rock singles. I've got a ton to feature here today, so without further ado, let's get on with it. Let's start with 1984's The Ghost in You from the Psychedelic Furs. Oh my God, this is such a great track. After all these years, it still holds up. Just a gorgeous melody. I mean, it's just one of those perfect pop tracks. And I've always loved Richard Butler's voice, the lead singer of Psychedelic Furs. I think he had a really unique quality. I think they were a really unique band. I think everything they put out during that kind of like from 80 to 85 period was really, really good. I think this is one of their greatest singles. And when I think of 1984 and I think of this song, I think about starting college, I think about working part-time, just a whole different era. And it's hard to believe that this song is like, what is it now? Like 41 years old. 41 years old this track is. So, Psychedelic Furs, The Ghost in You. What a track from 1984. From 1986, the Smithereens, their first official single, Blood and Roses. We used to do this track with my band back in the day. We did a really good version of it too. And even the flip side is just fantastic. Behind the Wall of Sleep, both songs featured on their debut album, especially for You from 1986. I love Pat Denisio's voice. I think the Smithereens were just an incredible live act. I must have saw them about a half a dozen times back in the mid to late 90s. They always put on a fine show. It's too bad that we lost Pat Denisio years ago. I met him once in Ventura before a show. He was the nicest guy. And this stuff really holds up as well, too. Just a great album, great band, great single. Blood and Roses from the Smithereens from 1986. Here's the flip side. On the Enigma label, I think a subsidiary of Capitol Records. The Style Council, another just absolute fave. My Ever-Changing Moods from 1984. This is first single by the Style Council, and the first outing from Paul Westerberg after he left the Jam in 1982. He was going for more of a little more of a jazzy rhythm and blues kind of vibe. Other bands would follow suit, kind of like Everything But the Girl. Their first two albums kind of had this vibe, and maybe like Prefab Sprout was another band. But this is just another just timeless track. Every time it comes on the radio, or whenever I do have the radio on, I just have to crank it up. It's so fantastic. My Ever-Changing Moods from Style Council from 1984. There's the flip, the back cover. When I first heard this song back in 1980, it just blew me away. It didn't sound like anything I ever heard before. It sounded like the future. And let's face it, 1980, I think, was one of the greatest years for new music. There was so much going on in 1980, especially like late 70s, early 80s, that whole like 77 through 82 period. Just amazing new acts coming out, new styles. Peter Gabriel was just on fire with his third album. And this single here, Games Without Frontiers, with Kate Bush on backing vocals, still really packs a punch. Nothing sounds like it. Her backup vocals, the instrumentation. The flip side is Lead a Normal Life, which was an instrumental song on the third album called Melt, which was just another real spooky little instrumental. But Games Without Frontiers is, I think, one of Peter Gabriel's greatest solo tracks. It just never loses its impact. From 1980, Peter Gabriel, Games Without Frontiers. One of their greatest singles, I think one of the greatest singles of all time, XTC, Senses Working Overtime from 1982. First time I heard this, I remember I was like sitting out in my backyard at my parents' house. I think I had K-Rock on and I heard it and I just was like, first listen, I was like, this is one of the greatest songs I have ever heard in my life. Just amazing. This is an import, and on the back it has the song called Blame the Weather, a great Colin Moulding track, which I think should have been on English Settlement. You know, they could have knocked a few of those filler tracks off that album, put Blame the Weather on there, it would have fit perfect. Even Tissue Tigers, another song on the flip side, is another outtake from English Settlement. I think is a great track. They could have thrown it on English Settlement. I don't know who makes these decisions when it comes to putting tracks on albums. But look at this single, though. Really, really cool. Look at the way it opens. Look at this. Really, really cool. There's the single. Just look at this whole kind of really, really cool stuff here. So yeah, XTC Senses Working Overtime, what you call is just a perfect pop single. And one of my all-time favorites, not just from the 80s, but of all time. Here you go, from 1982, XTC. Los Lobos. First time, this is a song called, this is off their album, How Will the Wolves Survive? The song called Will the Wolves Survive? Fantastic track. It's funny, back in 1980-81, Los Lobos came to my high school, Canoga Park High School, and they played in the auditorium. I think it was a Cinco de Mayo celebration or anything. This is like, you know, a few years prior to them getting signed to Geffen, or was it Slash Records, I believe. But I remember they would play a little traditional music, and then they would play some of their own compositions. But I thought they were really cool. I think this band is really authentic and true to themselves. And they had that huge hit of La Bamba, the cover of the Richie Valens tune. So it was great to see them It was great to see them have success. And I really respect this band. And I think this track is absolutely fabulous. Will the Wolves Survive from Los Lobos from 1984. The Pretenders had so many great singles. Oh my God, so many great songs from like 79, 80, 81. But one of my absolute favorite Pretenders singles is Talk of the Town from 1980. I remember when this came out, I was so high on that first album, that first debut. Like anything that came out, I had to get Pretenders. I was such a fanatic. I still love the Pretenders. One of my all-time favorite bands. The flip side, the Cuban Slide is a great track too. It was never featured on any of their albums. It's just a great B-side. And I just love Chrissie Hynde's voice. I think she's one of the most authentic female rock and rollers of all time. If you've read her book, I forgot what the title of it was. I've read it a few years back. It is just, I mean, it is the true rock and roll story. The experiences she had, you know, coming from Ohio and then moving to England and then becoming a writer, writing for NME and a few other publications, and then, you know, forming this band. Incredible stuff. Talk of the Town for the Pretenders from 1980. Here's the flip, the back. I remember back in 1985, I was going to college part-time, working part-time, and I remember I had this part-time job at Mervyn's department store for about 2 weeks. I had to get the fuck out of there immediately. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand those kind of jobs, working at the register. I remember even taking a break and almost thinking I got to quit. But I remember over the intercom during this period, they were always playing a lot of the same tracks. And one of them was ABC's Be Near Me. Love this track. It's so infectious. I was never really into these type of alternative bands, you know, these kind of synth bands, but this always brings a smile to my face. ABC Be Near Me, really well-crafted pop tune. Here's the flip side. But yeah, they would play this all the time over the intercom over those 2 weeks I worked at Mervyn's. And I remember just thinking, I love this track. Great track. ABC Be Near Me from 1985. R.E.M. I was the biggest R.E.M. fan in the 80s from about 82 to 87. I think Reckoning and Murmur, I must have played more than just about any albums of that era. I loved Fables of the Reconstruction as well. And I think one of their greatest singles was Southern Central Rain. Such a great track. I loved the way Stipe sung in the early days. People called it a mumble, but I think it worked well. I think when he started enunciating more, pronouncing words more clearly, his voice kind of took on this kind of whiny kind of vibe, which I didn't really like. Kind of started with like a little bit with Life's Rich Pageant, but then it started getting more and more whiny with the Document album and Green. But these early albums were really mysterious. They had a lot of mystique. I love the way he sang, and I love the way he sings the verses on this song. Such a great track. Southern Central Rain from 1984 from the album Reckoning. And then on the flip side, there's a cover of King of the Road, which would later appear on their kind of odds and sods album called Dead Letter Office from 1987. But yeah, R.E.M., they were just amazing in those early days, I thought. Just amazing. I remember the lights would always be really low in their concerts. I remember seeing them at the Hollywood Palladium in '84 and just being blown away. And that made me want to start a band. So R.E.M., Southern Central Rain from 1984. Another band, too, that had a lot of great singles. And the leader of this band died a few years ago. I think he was just brilliant. Carl Wallinger, I think was his name. The band World Party and the song called All Come True. So good. So freaking good. They had a lot of great songs like Ship of Fools, Is It Like Today. I have a compilation album of theirs with just their singles, and they're just all dynamite. I think this guy was really talented. Lost him too early. World Party, All Come True from 1986, I believe. Here's the flip, the back. The Bangles. I remember first getting their album, what is it called? I forgot what it was called. Their first major album released on Columbia. But I remember hearing that first track, Hero Takes a Fall. Just an incredible single. I don't like their later stuff like Walk Like an Egyptian and Manic Monday, but that first album was fantastic. Oh, All Over the Place. That's what it's called. Great vocal from Susanna Hoffs. And then Where Were You When I Needed You as the flip. Really cool. I think they really had a really cool take on 60s pop. Hero Takes a Fall from the Bangles from 1984. Oh, one of my favorite LA bands of all time, X. Got to throw this in here. Here's the original single of White Girl. I think one of the most infectious guitar riffs of all time by Billy Zoom, and those harmonies by Exene and John Doe. Just so otherworldly, so haunting sounding. I think it's just one of the most perfect pop songs from the 1980s. The flip side is Your Phone's Off the Hook, But You're Not from the Los Angeles album. Here's the back of the cover, them live in concert. And I think they're on their final jaunt, their final tour right now in 2025. So if they're coming near you should check them out. I think I've seen them about 7 or 8 times at this point. But yeah, one of the great all-time live acts as well. Just tight as hell. DJ Bonebreak and John Doe. What an incredible rhythm section. Billy Zoom on guitar. Exene on vocals. Just one of the all-time great LA bands. White Girl by X from 1981. But I think the song was recorded in 80. Here's a really odd Joe Jackson single I always liked. It came out in 1986. I remember the first time I heard it on the radio, I was like, this is really cool. It has some great guitar chords. And I love the guitar chords that are coming out of the chorus. Really, really cool. The song called Right and Wrong by Joe Jackson. Never hear it on the radio. You only heard it for a brief moment in time during the mid-'80s, but I really love this track. Back cover. Breaking Us in Two is the live version on the flip side, the B-side. So, dig this track. Another one, another favorite song. This should have been a huge hit, but it just never really took off, is The Church. And off their debut album, the original album was called Of Skins and Heart. That was the import original version, and in the US, the album was just released as The Church, titled The Church. And the song I'm talking about is The Unguarded Moment. Here's the single right here. Just a perfect song. Great guitar playing, great guitar sound, just infectious from the moment it starts. On the back is a song called The Bus Driver, which I don't believe was on any of their albums. So, The Unguarded Moment by the Church is, if you've never heard this track, I highly suggest pulling it up. It is fantastic. I'm going to throw another Pretenders track in here. I love Message of Love. I had to throw this in here too. Another just stellar Pretenders track from the early 80s. This came out in 80. And the flip side is Porcelain, a non-album B-side, which is a really cool rave-up kind of track. Really cool. Message of Love by the Pretenders. And another one, too. This is, I just mentioned this in a previous video. Never went anywhere, this song, but it's off of Elvis Costello's Imperial Bedroom album. Man Out of Time, just emotionally incredible song. And this is like a promo copy of that song. And on the flip side, there is no song. There's no song at all. No flip side, even on the promo copy. Man Out of Time by Elvis Costello, one of my all-time favorite Costello tunes. Couple of 12-inch singles to showcase here today. The Replacements. I think one of their greatest singles. I remember this is the song that got me into the Replacements, hearing this on the radio, on college radio, K-Rock. I Will Dare from 1984 from the album Let It Be. I always thought the chorus sounded like the chorus of I'm Only Sleeping by the Beatles. I think that's probably what drew me in. But one of my favorite albums from the 80s, Let It Be from the Replacements. On the flip side here, you get a raucous version of 20th Century Boy by T-Rex. Just absolutely, it just blows the house down. And then you get a live version of Hank Williams' Hey Good Lookin' on the flip side too as well. So just really, really good stuff here, The Replacements. One of my all-time favorite 80s bands. I Will Dare from 1984. And of course, I got to throw in a couple of Smiths singles. The Smiths were just cranking out one great single after another. The Smiths were just on a roll for about 4 years, and then that was it. They were done. I love all four of their albums. Their compilations are great, like Half Full of Hollow and Louder Than Bombs. They have that singles collection, which collects all their singles, which are all great, and the way they progress from single to single. But one of my absolute favorite Smiths singles of all time is Big Mouth Strikes Again from 1986. This is the 12-inch single. I remember I was just on a Smiths roll. I think R.E.M. and the Smiths in the mid-'80s were, without question, my favorite bands. And I always looked forward to a new release or a new single. And I remember when Big Mouth Strikes Again came out, I remember I was just in pure joy. It's a very uplifting track. Maybe the lyrics aren't, but the track is Johnny Marr's acoustic strumming, and then that midsection where he's doing that picking part. It's just so damn good, right? Then on the flip side is a track called Unlovable, which I think is fantastic too, which would feature later on the compilation Louder Than Bombs. And I think that song should have been on Queen Is Dead. I think they should have threw off like Never Had No One Ever and threw that song in instead. I think that's a way better song, Unlovable. And then you get a song called Money Changes Everything, one of the few Smiths instrumentals. That was one, The Dre's Train, and then there was another one called, I forgot. It's on Louder Than Bombs, but anyway. Great single, Big Mouth Strikes Again. And while we're speaking about the Smiths, another great one. This is a single that was only released in the Netherlands. It's the first song off Meat Is Murder, and it's The Headmaster Ritual. This is kind of a rare 12-inch single here. And I think The Headmaster Ritual has one of the greatest opening guitar lines of any song in the 80s. Johnny Marr just going off on these arpeggios for about a minute before Morrissey comes and starts singing. Really, really great track. And then on the flip side here, I never really liked the track Meat Is Murder, at least the studio version, but I think here is the definitive version on this one. Live in Oxford. This live version of Meat Is Murder, for me, is the definitive version because of Johnny Marr's guitar. It just sounds so expansive. There's a lot of echo and reverb on the outro. So another one, The Headmaster Ritual by the Smiths. Let me know what your favorite 80s alternative rock singles are in the comment section. I'd love to know. Let's talk about it. As always, thanks for watching. If you dig the content across this channel, please press subscribe. I'd appreciate it. It's $0. It costs nothing. And we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.